Right now, Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula has pumped the brakes on further extensions to the current driver's license renewal deadline. More than 500,000 licenses still need to be processed before the end of the month. Meanwhile, Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga says they're working with the Road Traffic Management Corporation to offer driving and learner licenses at schools across the country. To discuss these issues, we're joined by OUTA's Chief Legal Officer, Stephanie Fick. Thank you very much for your time here on All Angles, Ms. Fick. Yesterday, the Minister announcing that the deadline or the grace period will not be extended further than the end of March. But looking at the backlog that they have and the backlog that was exacerbated by COVID-19 and the lockdown, do you think that this was a good decision?
No, I don't think so. I think the minister is going to be forced to extend that deadline yet again. Although we've heard these numbers, I don't think we really know the amount of motorists that still need to renew their licenses. And we've been saying right from the start, and we're beginning to think that the minister should maybe consider this now. Seriously consider this, is extending people's, the renewal of the card to 10 years instead of 5 years. It will immediately alleviate the problem that we are experiencing. I mean, we've also, there are other problems that there are experiencing at certain stations, and it's not safe for people to go and renew their licenses. It's not safe for the people working there. So there's a lot of it's backlog, a lot of problems. So I think the minister should seriously consider extending the deadline, or really consider just extending it from 5 to 10 years.
All right, but let's talk about the Education Minister, Angie Motshekga, talking about plans to teach children from a young age, of course, how to drive, etc. It's a good idea, but it's not the first time I'm hearing this. I'm sure it's been 10 years since it's been in the pipeline.
Yes, so I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it is a good idea to educate our kids to be responsible motorists. I just don't think that the idea to create centres to obtain your driver's license and your learner's license at schools is such a good idea. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, I think let's rather concentrate on giving each and every child in this country an education. Let's make sure that, yes, they are educated properly, that that every child, and I want to reiterate this, have got access to and don't have to walk 1,000,000 miles to get to a school. And then we need to consider education in terms of, yes, being a responsible motorist, but what about just also teaching our kids about voter responsibility? I think we saw in the local elections that we need to educate our children so that they can get involved in electoral reform and so forth. So to use money that is supposed to be used in a department like the education department by saying that another department doesn't have money and we're going to help them out, I think you're creating problems where let's concentrate on what the education department is supposed to do, and concentrate on, that's a department that's also got financial restraints. So, Minister Mbalula must solve his own problems. And I think if the RTMC just concentrate and see, why they don't have money to do this, let's rather look at the root cause of why they struggle and not try and shift it from one department to another. I think education is really a big issue, and we need to rather make sure that our kids get their right to an education first before we look at testing centres.
Well, the minister says that this will also assist in terms of road carnage on our roads to ensure that, people know from a young age how to drive and they don't just get into vehicles not knowing exactly the rules of the road, etc. So you still don't support that would assist at least with that, with road carnage?
No. I agree with you that in terms of educating our kids in terms of how to be responsible motorists, that I agree with, that I really agree with, but that should be part of the curriculum, and I agree with you. I think that should already be part of the curriculum. I think it cultivates responsible citizens. But I think that, what he said goes further than that, that the schools is going to, assist with people getting licenses and all of that. Physically having centres there, unless I misunderstand it, and I just don't think that that's realistic. In the sense that I think that the department could rather spend money on getting more schools, getting schools accessible to children, and then make sure the curriculum is up to standard, that we can have kids that can go to university, that can compete not only on a national level, but also in an international level. Let's create children that understands how to be a responsible motorist, because yes, that will of course, I think, make a difference on the carnage of our roads, but also cultivate children who wants to be, responsible voters, so there's a lot of things. If we want to have a discussion about how the education department can be better, I'm sure there's a lot of people with even more experience than me that can say how to do that. But to try and alleviate the problems that we are seeing at another department, because the minister has got a crisis on his hands. He can't give the answers to the motorists that are struggling to get their motor vehicle licenses renewed. First the card machine, and it was first COVID, and they can't handle the numbers. To turn around and say that the education department is going to help us, I think is just trying to deflect the problems that is current in the transport department, and that's not going to solve their problems.
All right, so you're saying that it's going to be a monetary and a logistical nightmare. Talking about, realistic things, do you think this 500,000 licenses by the end of October is reachable?
No. That's why I said I think we started off this conversation by saying I think the minister should I think he would be forced to extend the deadline yet again, because I think administratively they struggle. Although there's this new system, you still need the centres, for example, your driver's license renewals, driver's license card renewals, and people getting their first driver's licenses and so forth. But that being said, that I think he's going to be forced to extend the deadline even further, is why doesn't the minister really think about extending the renewal to 10 years instead of 5 years? Before we get people to get temporary driver's licenses and all of that, and if you really think about it, I'm really starting to wonder whether this is not a money-making scheme to the detriment of each and every motorist. I think we are faced with, the petrol price that is going to skyrocket because of international things that are happening, and why should we still pay an enormous amount of money to make an appointment on an internet appointment? You have to pay, and it's just unnecessarily cumbersome and a financial burden on South Africans. We are taxed enough, and I think then the question is, why are we paying an enormous amount of taxes if they can't use the taxes to the best interest of each and every South African in this country? Look at the root cause of the problem, not try and fix it by, on the surface and trying to, deflect what the problems are. People are still experiencing problems.
All right, thank you so much for your time here on All Angles. That was ALTA's Chief Legal Officer, Advocate Stephanie Fick.